Hi, everybody, and welcome. I am Hayley Mitchell Haugen. I am the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. And tonight I have the audacity to host my own poetry reading as I am celebrating the publication of my chapbook, The Blue Wife Poems from Kelsay Books. I'm also celebrating the publication of Rebecca Brock's book, also from Kelsay Books, Each Bearing Out. So we'll both be reading tonight. And then later we have a open mic reading from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions online contributors for our fall 2022 issue. So I'll be looking forward to that. So happy to have you all here. Thank you. So again, I'm Hayley Mitchell Haugen, and I do edit Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. In my other life, I am a full professor of English for Ohio University Southern Campus in Southeastern Ohio. And my book, The Blue Wife Poems, which just came out from Kelsay, is a little chapbook. I've been working on this thing for about 3 years. I did originally imagine it being a fuller collection, and I did quite a bit of research into women with depression for this book. And I didn't end up using a lot of it, but a lot of that research does inform the poems that ended up being a chapbook. It wanted to be smaller than I researched for. It wanted to stay a little closer to home and with my own experiences. So as I read, some people ask, well, are you Blue Wife? Who's Blue Wife? And it's like, yeah, I am Blue Wife, but also Blue Wife is a persona, hoping that she speaks to many women and anybody with feelings of depression. And there's also, some cultural critique in here and some history. There's a variety of little things. So that's where I'm going with the Blue Wife. Here I go. The Blue Wife read a story once about a woman who walked into a cornfield, just left her gaping husband at a roadside super quick, and strolled into the embrace of night. The fireflies closing the gaps behind her, briefly lighting the spaces she had been. Blue Wife, though, is no romantic. The forest behind her house slowly encroaches, all coyote howl and jawbone, deer tick and smothering kudzu. Poison ivy strangles her shrubbery, darkens the sun porch walls, and the hope that is the firefly is too fleeting to light the way. Part of my research, I visited Akron, Ohio, and went to the National Museum of Psychology, and they had some just really great stuff there. And one of the things they had was one of the, quote, ice pick tools that Walter Freeman used to perform lobotomies. So Walter Freeman was the gentleman who brought the lobotomy, kind of popularized it in the U.S. and had performed, over 1,000 lobotomies on asylum patients, and that was part of my research. And that one did make it into the book. And so I have a little quote from him, and then the last lines of the poem are actually his words as well. And I kind of changed my voice a little bit for that. This is Get the Bitch a Lobotomy. For Alice Hood Hammett, the first U.S. prefrontal lobotomy patient. She was a master at bitching and really led her husband a dog's life, Walter Freeman. Freeman took Alice from Alice in 1936, severing her neural connections to relieve her from depression, her restlessness, to relieve her husband from her bitching, her anxious garrulousness. After, she was calm in that wax dummy kind of way the history books would chronicle, the activists would question. Perhaps she felt some loss of dignity, fell into a childlike stubbornness and sloppy eating, Or maybe, like 1,000 others to come, she sat inert, disoriented to time, to place, as she tried to recall some feelings she once had, some talent. But why worry about what is normal? Every patient probably loses something from the operation, some spontaneity, some sparkle, some flavor of the personality. So the United States is one of just 2 nations that has allowed direct marketing to consumers, like on television and like through magazines of psychotropics, and other kind of mental health kind of medicines. And that was one of the things that just fascinated me when I read about it. The other nation was Australia or New Zealand, one of those. And they're such a part of our lives now, right? We turn on the morning news and we hear, there's pills for everything. And then a lot of that is mental illness. And I think of my kids growing up in a generation of always having that out there, right? That out there. And one of the things I've been very interested in is the symptom list and how we run across these lists online. Do you have depression? Do you have, ABCD, all different kinds of things, and how we've become a culture of kind of diagnosing ourselves, right? And we go to our doctors and we have these lists and we say, I want Prozac or I want Zoloft or, fill in the blank. And there's a lot of that going on. And so while it creates certainly a culture of advocacy for patients, right, to become more knowledgeable about things, I think there's also a bit of you read some of these lists and like, well, yeah, everybody has a little bit of all of that, right? So I think it can be dangerous. But here's my version of the symptom list, which started out very, very clinical and slowly lost all the clinical thanks to the help of my wonderful writers group, many of you who are here. So the Blue Wife discovers the symptom list. In her new issue of Home and Garden, what's the difference, she reads, between a bad case of the blues and depression? Take the quiz. What sounds familiar? Do you feel like you're failing as a wife, a mother? Like even the dogs go unnoticed for days? Are you convinced that you are an imposter, that your students know you are faking it, that you can't hide anxiety behind a smile? Do you visit your friends and fidget in their comfortable armchairs? Do you attend conferences only to sneak off to Bob Evans and eat an omelet on your own? This condition, this loss of pleasure, is known as anhedonia. It is cause for concern. Does your husband say, are you sleeping again? Do you have trouble with waking in the night, wondering if you've left the garage open, if you paid the long guy, if your mother too is awake at this late hour, worrying? Did you join Weight Watchers and eat that quarter pounder anyway? Did you count the points for the half bag of Oreos? How many times did you reread that line in that poem? How many words float daily out the open door? How did you miscalculate your son's tuition? Are you irritable and angry? Do you curse when you burn the dinner? Do you honk the horn? Do you throw things? Are you impatient with grocery clerks and automated banking? Do your kids ask, why are you screaming? Are you still enraged at the uncle who molested you 40 years ago? Do you fume over the family who allowed their shame to shield him? When the looming semi-truck speeds towards you on Industrial Parkway, do you imagine yourself swerving into the no-pass zone? When the Ohio River is running high and fast, do you picture yourself swirling amongst its debris? How did you score? Seek a counselor, a psychiatrist. Be sure to share this list if the symptoms sound familiar. If you think you might be suffering from depression, if you are a woman. I'm eating my hair. All right, thank you. All right. Blue wife puts too much stock in a good day when she welcomes that tinge of happiness that enfolds her while working. A cool breeze along her edges, lifting her mood in small measures, like the Ecuadorian butterfly tapping its way across lavender at the conservatory show. Suddenly clear-headed and light and just happy despite the gray day, the rain. She texts her friends, her mother, swears she's eaten her way back to good health. No sweets, no white breads, the extra pounds starting to shed. Or maybe the doTERRA oils diffusing in her workspace with endurance and hope. Like it's always been as easy as just plugging in and misting 2 years of dark humors away. But the next day, the very damn next day, that feeling is gone as quickly as it descended. The dog's too needy, the kids too loud, the afternoon nap like a siren call, and then those 2 hours wasted, the headache worse, the mind scattered, unfocused, and then taken by surprise, like when the yellow butterfly snapped closed its wings and revealed a shock of blue. I hear all your little silent clappings. Thank you. For Blue Wife, a lot of the struggle is domestic. It's the daily grind. And I do feel, and in my research, I think shows some of this too, that, people with depression, that it is the little things, it's the daily things that just start to weigh so heavily upon you. And this is a poem about that. And I hate to cook anyway, so, Blue Wife in the kitchen. Only threw the meat that one time when the burgers burnt so badly, their black edges crumbled as gritty as tile grout. The smoke alarm wailing, the toddler screeching. She smashed the blue Fiestaware on the countertop, sent those over-grilled bastards rolling across the stove. "Goddamn cooking," she cried, hurling a charred disc past her husband's quiet shutter in the dining room. She crumpled then, amongst the weight of her ordinary domesticity, the meal planning, the grocery shopping, the cooking, the cleaning. I hate those women, she thought, the ones who make it look so easy, who adore their instant pots and pin recipes to their browser tabs, the ones who don't wilt a little every time a child asks, "What's for dinner?" Her woes spilled over like last week's chili as the sun set beyond her kitchen curtains. She hoped her family might offer some comfort, a release from her anxiety, but she knew they looked on and saw only her foolishness, knew she would still have to feed them. I have one more. The next poems that follow in the collection are my experience with childhood sexual abuse. And I don't read those in public. They're still a little raw, as you can tell. But I do have a happier poem at the end of the book. It's happy for me anyway, in comparison to some of the other pieces. But I do think it ends the book on a note of hope, but also that recognition that, living with depression is a process. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. You're going to find things that work for you, even if you know they only work temporarily. There's still like that hope there. This one's a Sestina. Ends with a little quote from Freud. When asked what people need to be happy, Freud responded, "Love and work." What the hands know. The happiest people rely on their hands, digging deep. Let me try again. The happiest people rely on their hands, digging deep into good, moist earth, working the vegetable patch, the flower garden, moving through the seasons from seed to table. The pleasure is in the effort, its own purposeful reward, the intentional connection, a kind of healing. Think of the mother's touch that heals, the swaddled infant in nurturing hands, the acts of grooming, a child rewarded by the warm washcloth, the gentle work of untangling unruly hair, the pleasure of cool fingertips as a finger moves across the brow. Even patients who moved through the asylum were heart healed by supporting their own sustenance, pleased by the abundant tasks for their restless hands, making shoes, repairing mattresses, working as tailors, seamstresses, broom makers, rewards reaped through constant motion, rewards displayed in handmade bird cages, canaries moving in every shop space, filling each full workday with song. The craftswoman, too, shapes healing through the steady exertion of her own hands, over clay, over glass, over the unique pleasure of the fountain pen, traversing the open, pleasant space of the open line. I once ignored the rewards afforded those with, I thought, clever, gifted hands. Didn't know I had only to keep mine moving, to forgo the inertia for doing, embrace the healing, motivated by the body in action, working for its own peace of mind. Focused on the work of Afghan making, I embraced the new and pleasing repetition of fingers guiding wool. I healed my racing thoughts by painting canvases, rewarded as each tiny numbered space became a thing, moved from idea to actuality with the help of my hands. And through this work, in these moments, I briefly healed myself, pleased the sorrowful aspects of my being, felt rewarded, like moving toward freedom, unbinding one's own hands. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to those. Some of you have heard them many, many times. Others of you for the first go round. So thank you for being here for that. It is my absolute pleasure now to move on to our next featured reader tonight, is Rebecca Brock. And Rebecca appeared in one of my earliest editions of Sheila-Na-Gig Online, and that's how I met her, as I've met so many of you through that online space. And she's won at least one, maybe two of my editor's prizes. And I'm very excited to announce that I will be featuring a title from her sometime next year, and that we're working on that. But tonight we are celebrating Rebecca's release of Each Bearing Out from Kelsay Books, the same publisher that published the Blue Wife poem. So we thought it'd be fun to do this thing together. So Rebecca Brock, her work can be found in Calyx, the Comstock Review, Momed Review, Perrine's Falcon, Sky Island Journal, Whale Road Review, and elsewhere. She has an MFA from Bennington College. She recently won the Editor's Choice Award for Sheila-Na-Gig. I think that was her second one, okay. And was recently a finalist in the 2021 Joy Harjo Poetry Prize at Cutthroat, a journal for the arts, and a semi-finalist in the 2021 New Women's Voices Contest at Finishing Line Press. So lots of big important places are recognizing her work, which is great. Her nonfiction essay about being a working flight attendant on 9/11 was published in the Three Penny Review and earned a pushcart honorable mention. Idaho born, she has lived temporarily in Virginia for more than 20 years and still isn't used to the humidity. She's been a flight attendant for most of her adult life and is still surprised by this fact. She's a mother of two boys, finds parenthood to be perplexing, sometimes terribly beautiful gamble of the heart. You can find more of her work online at RebeccaBrock.org. So welcome, Rebecca. It's really an honor to have you here.
Thank you, Hayley. First, thank you for your poems. I've read all those, but to hear them in your voice was really special. And I think I'm speaking probably for everybody here. It was just really beautiful to hear you read those. So thank you. I know some were very close to the bone that you shared, and they're just so powerful. So, and thanks everyone for coming. Several of the poems in this chapbook first appeared at Sheila-Na-Gig, and Hayley's enthusiasm and encouragement sort of set me on the path to thinking maybe I do have a collection or a book I could put together. I call these my mom poems, so they're all about my experience of motherhood, and I felt like I'm moving on to writing different things, and I kind of wanted these to be a little collection of, the beginning. My opening dedication is a quote from Raymond Carver's Late Fragment, and the whole quote is, "And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth." And I love that idea of the beloved. And sometimes I feel like it's the one thing I know I can give my kiddos in this time, that sense of being beloved. But I also really love that even so, because it just acknowledges all the hard that comes with the light. And that's what a lot of my poems explore. So I'm going to start with the first poem in the book, Expanse, Immensity, Collapse. When did time start? My son asks, looming at 4 a.m. The animal in me startles, cries out, his face so close and sudden in the dark. It's only a moment that I don't know him. But it's the kind of thing he asks. He could mean the tick of the clock, his knowledge of bedtime, time to wake up, or he could mean his own beginning. Burdened with a restless mother, he understands distance is a thing to measure. How much longer, Mama? Between here and there, and when we are on our way toward home again. Already he's unearthed stories of stonefish in a Wyoming desert, of cliffs in Nova Scotia scored with prehistoric trees, of an Oreodont skull in South Dakota. He knows that rocks themselves have ages. He might have been asking about old human things, temple gods and sacred rites, lost cities. He's raced his brother around ancient mounds in Ohio, walked undulations of an earthen serpent's twists and turns, once aligned with moon, sun, and steady-seeming stars. Do you hear that? He asks, after I've coaxed him back beneath the covers, snuggled down beside him. A sound like clanging pipes, like a radiator we don't have shutters. And I rise to look out the window, turn to tell him it is only hard rain. There are at least two ways to measure a life, the human one and the universe's grander score of expanse, immensity, collapse. I lie awake to the wash of it. Thanks. This next poem is about tigers, sort of, and in particular, a scene from a childhood movie I love, the Swiss Family Robinson, the Disney version. And I don't know if anybody remembers it, but the little brother sets a tiger trap. And it meant something different once I became a mother to little boys. So this poem is called Tiger. Tiger. When I found myself mother to a boy who would be interested in tigers, if there were any nearby enough to catch, I began to look for crevices and cracks, the deep falls, sudden implausibilities, like a boy's tiger trap. Meat just out of reach, the whisper sound of padded paws on leaves without ground beneath them, that whoosh of disappearance, that fearful maw, that shaky disbelief, not unlike when there is a baby, new, born, he and I still trembling, still wet. The orientation happens in a moment, for a tiger, maybe. But I floundered there, at the changes, at the loss, caught by how little I knew of tigers or falls or the possibilities of little boys. Thanks. Okay, this next one, I'm a little nervous, guys, sorry. So thanks for bearing with me. This next one is about the illness of my oldest son when he was an infant. He had a lot of seizures that weren't explainable, and it sort of reframed my whole motherhood. And I remember getting in the elevator at the children's hospital, and another mother got on, and we didn't speak a word, but we just looked at each other and we just knew what we were both. And that's when I first felt like, oh, I'm in this rank of motherhood. So without saying a word. So this one is called, I'm Telling You There Was No Light Bulb. The mother I might have been might have laughed out loud about how babies don't break. But I learned to sense it coming. My baby, not a year old, his soft shift to something rigid, eyes slipping to white, small fists banging, clashing, invisible toy symbols, seizures, unexplained. Maybe, the doctor said, maybe he will just grow out of it. You don't really want to find a reason, the pediatric neurologist said. After every test and all the blood work and all the answers coming back to tell us what my baby didn't have, I was learning. There were terrible things to find a way to live with. I tried to teach him to speak with his hands. More, love, bird, cat. Today, he saw a dog and patted his leg to show me dog, like something easy and clear. Mama, it's a dog, do you see? I did what any mother might, swooped my baby up, and I didn't mean to, but the gaze I turned on him was all life. He held out his hand, fingers opening and closing, coming in and then out, a determined fluttered pulse, his sign, his way to show me light, a word we'd been working on. I'm telling you, there was no light bulb, only sunlight, only his blue eyes on mine, like something wide open, his baby fist flashing, flaring, making his own sense of my brightness. This one I feel like is a crowd favorite with my anyone who's been living through these last years, but especially those who've been mothering through these last years of political, cultural upheaval, the school shootings and climate change. Just all of it can be pretty overwhelming, and it speaks to kind of that overarching question I feel like is haunting me as I mother through these years of raising my kiddos for a future that I can't even imagine or quite comprehend. So this is called Good Housekeeping. She keeps trying to get her house in order, pretending with the rest of them that the sun won't melt the earth, that the seas won't burn, that the land won't disappear under water or ice or our own triggered destruction. She keeps going back to the dishes, to the meals, to washing the clothes, to worrying over the state of the carpet, which is funny in a sad way if you knew the state of her house. The way the windows leak, the way the doors have to be snugged closed, the way they blow open anyway with the slightest wind, the cracks in the ceiling from settling or moisture or just poor craftsmanship. She still decorates for the holidays. She still worries over the tidiness of things, the nutrition of meals, the state of the bathroom, of the toilet, under assault by the misdirection and lack of attention of 3 males in one small house. She is like some madwoman, straightening a frame during an earthquake, riding a vase after a hurricane took off the roof. She sees it is the season to behave so, to live beside, within madness, to mother through it. It is despair pushed off to vacuum anyway, to make a decent meal, to require everyone to sit. She is hoping the children won't notice or remember the windows, the carpets, the way the door won't shut. She is desperate for their happiness, for their solidity, for them to make it to some new place she never will. All right. You hanging in there? Okay. These next 3, I wasn't going to read one of them, but I know Hayley loves one of them, so I'm going to read it. But these next 3 are about my youngest kiddo, who I always describe as a heart with arms and legs. And He has the uncanny ability of placing me absolutely in the present moment, sometimes in shock and sometimes in delight. So these next three are about him. Measurable pulse. The tree caught him, held him in the crook of a branch, his ankle wedged tight. He dangled there, all 7 years of him, an upside-down X of a boy, belly exposed, hands reaching, a measurable pulse between him and hard ground. I moved like a mother, caught him just as the school bus arrived with its defeated sigh. The children, the bus, even other mothers left us with their sympathy. Our walk back home was slow and limping. The morning's usual push had me yelling, teeth, shoes, yelling just to be heard, let's go, let's go, let's go. I forgot to notice the sky, the way the clouds spread, the way the new-leaved trees beckoned, or even this boy, lung, heart, blood, bone, bundled and rushing into the newly lit world. He is going to learn, I tell myself, because he will have to, won't he? How to follow the rules of others, the expectations of people and things like gravity and light, force and motion, that push and pull of impossibility. This one is one of my favorites, so I always try and read it. It's called A Rock is a Rock is a Rock. You got your feelings hurt at school. Again, you tell me seriously that you feel a heartbeat thump, thump, thunking in your pet rock. You swear you can. I say it's your own heartbeat in your palm, hammering. I am straddling dinner and your brother's baseball game, and you try to explain how your best friend tried to make you throw the stupid thing away. I say I told you not to take it to school. I told you over and over, a rock is a rock is a rock. I almost say out loud, baby, sometimes you're just too much. But your breaths are coming hard. Your small chest heaves. Love, there is nothing weak about you. I turn the stove off. You let me hug you. The pulse of you barely surface deep. When you let me hold him, Rocky is still warm. You believe in so many things, even me. And this is another one from Sheila-Na-Gig. I'm reading this for you, Hayley, because I think you love this one. So I almost left it out. Sorry if you've heard it before. It's called Pre-Op. The surgery room, after the bustle and baby talk of the prep, is a bright, unremarkable surprise. Also cold. Masks and hats looming. The old look older, I assume, because I know the small looks smaller. The vulnerable, well, I am only allowed back because I am the mother, and the medical staff are doing camaraderie, the wink and the nudge, and the friendly, friendly fire before the undoing, before repairing the undone. It is hard for me to act as though it is not hard to be alive. My boy is stiff and terrified and breathing quick, willing himself to hold, to stay still. Even still, he grimaces at the anesthesia mask, and I reach to help hold it. Well, aren't you useful, Mom? Someone says. I mumble something back, but that's the whole of me, there, holding the mask, and he's trying not to go under, his eyes trying to open up against their closing. He pants into the mask, fighting, and I'm telling him, this child, this boy, whom I've taught everything from look both ways to pedal, pedal, to cat, C-A-T, cat, to 1 + 1, to wash your hands, brush your teeth, wash your parts, don't hug your friends so hard, say please, say thank you, look people in the eye when you speak, breathe, buddy, just breathe. He fights until it seizes him, the easy drift, a hard crash. I say what all the mothers must say. He's really special, and find myself making thank you hands, pleading prayer hands, please and thank you and God bless hands. 2 of the nurses can't meet my eyes. 1 is crying. Maybe other mothers are tougher, or maybe nurses understand more than most. Or maybe it was just him. That last fight he gave before going out, that spirit, its pulse and serve, its oddity and fight. Okay, we're moving to adolescence, and then I will let you go. I wrote these last ones are more surrounded my older kiddo, and I have 2 teenagers now, but I just feel like adolescence is a storm, right? And sometimes a great distance, and then sometimes that brilliant revelation. I don't, similar to Hayley, the blue wife, I have the mother in several of these poems, and she's the persona. And so I'm going to read a couple of the mother poems, and this one is, I lost it. The mother instructs her son. She tells him to not just clear the dishes, but load them in the dishwasher. Rinse the sink, wipe the placemat, put the milk away. Someday, she says absently, whoever you live with will thank me when there is not cereal all over the sink. And he says, certain in that way she recognizes as him thinking, as him knowing some truth is absolute. I won't eat cereal when I'm grown up. But he has eaten the same 2 bowls of the same kind of cereal every single morning for the last 6 of his 12 years. What will you eat? She asks. Eggs, he says, as if it's obvious. His sense of that happening, his lack of hesitation, his full assumption that he will make it to there, that grown-up place, sure about it, steadied calm in a way she doesn't think she has ever been. So she pays attention as he wipes the placemat, caps the milk, to his side smile with its recognition to him, new and now, and all the ages in between. She hides her face from him as she turns to shut the fridge. Her eyes sting as if she'd looked too hard at brightness, at creation, at curved paths, at a boy who is and will be. All right, I'm almost done. I just have 2 left. Thank you. This one will speak for itself. I think it's what the mother can't say to her son at 14. We used to watch cloudscape, unfurling like time lapse, the sky shifting an exhale past the Missouri River, heading west, chasing the dry breeze, pushing you ahead of me or pulling you behind. You and me, not yet bones, a jar of what is, what was, what shall be. I can't tell you how it comes, caused by implications of the sun, from east or west. This wind shifts light, changes the face of stone, tells as many tales as any stationary thing. It takes my own breath in gusts, in fists unseen, entangle and toss across the distance of motion, rise, force, and torrent. I see you, surrounded, free, ruddy-cheeked, your hat taking off. Everything that wants to could fly for a while, could glide thermals like a full-bellied hawk with time to spend on pleasure. Even a blade of grass can sing like a scream, leave us wondering what spirit, what worn-away thing, holy or otherwise, just passed by, leaving you gleaming. Thanks. For my last poem, it's not the final poem in the book, but the last line is the title in the book, and I've never read it anywhere. So I thought I would finish with this one, and it's another mother poem. So it's The Mother Considers Solastalgia, if I said that right. It's a newer word that has to do a little bit with homesickness and nostalgia, but more with environmental crisis. So a home that's kind of already gone, even though you're there. So The Mother Considers Solastalgia, Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. She squints to watch the seagulls form scattered clouds around a trawler just past the waves. 2 pelicans fly in tandem. Closer still, a rookery of cormorants, swift dark bodies, bold-suited for their world of wet. Yesterday, she told her sons to look away from the injured one, flailing in the sand, that awful tear and try of wings. Behind her, seaside houses rise up on delicate stilts. Over the ocean, she hears the noise of men rebuilding roads, bridges that arch higher, reaching to connect land to land that will not last. Even the cormorant was dying, or trying not to, on a stretch of disappearing sand between sound and sea. Today, she watches her children build an ornate, crooked sandcastle. Their father adds flourishes of engineering, details of seashell. She knows they drove too far for too short of time, tells herself an old parental tale. This is what they will remember. She knows it isn't only pain and fear that made that dying bird pulse and struggle. Also instinct, also memory. Maybe the feathered body's low swoop through wave crash. Maybe beating wings of brethren on the seascape. Maybe all those sleek, iridescent lives, each bearing out. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Just beautiful. It's wonderful to hear aloud. So thank you for sharing all that amazing work. Buy her book, people. It's amazing. All righty. So as I mentioned before, we have some open mic readers with us tonight who appear in Sheila-Na-Gig Online's Fall 2022 issue. So we're going to move into that. And our first reader up is Kurt Luchs. So welcome, Kurt.
Thank you. I feel a little bit inadequate to follow so many good poems from two fine books that I'm obviously going to have to get. I don't have them yet. Thanks for having us. Thanks for taking my work. I should mention, when I first returned to poetry after a lifetime of writing mostly humor, in 2016, Sheila-Na-Gig was one of the first places to take my work, and it meant a lot to me at the time, and it still does. The poem I'm going to read first is called Fog and Fire. It just came to me like this. I didn't know where it came from at first, but I understand now that it is in fact a COVID poem. My girlfriend, Elizabeth, who's a student of Carl Jung, said, well, that's Jung's archetype of the apocalypse. Oh, okay. That's what it is then. It's called Fog and Fire. Fog lay on the land like gauze on a wound that wouldn't heal, holding the sickness close to keep a scab from forming. Or at least that's how it seemed to me. I'm often a bit depressed before my first cup of coffee. I was busy keeping my morbid thoughts to myself when Mrs. Sheldon emerged from the mist, completely covered in flames. The most terrifying part was that she wasn't screaming. Apart from burning from head to foot, she was her normal self. She smiled as she passed, said, "Good morning," and disappeared back into the fog. A few seconds later, Jake Lewis came along the same path, carrying his beach sandals and also blazing away while feeling no pain. He grunted, which is about all you'll ever get out of Jake, but not because his swimming trunks were nearly burned off. He didn't appear to notice that, scorched and smoldering though he was. I stopped right there and sat down on a sand dune, pondering these portents. Not half a minute had gone by when the Nisbet sisters burst upon the scene, all four of them, flames shooting out of them every which way. They were giggling and waving. I waved back and realized my own arm was on fire and I couldn't feel a thing. It's one thing to come upon an apocalypse. It's quite another to take part. I stood up, turned toward Lake Michigan, and began walking into the waves, wondering which primal element would consume me first. The fog was finally beginning to lift. And the other one is kind of in honor of today. I'm coming to you from Kalamazoo, Michigan, which was featured on Good Morning America because we just got a foot of snow dumped on us today, and apparently there's another one coming. This one is called Blizzard, and it appeared in my first chapbook, which also has two poems published by Sheila-Na-Gig. Blizzard is 14 lines long, and because it's a syllabic verse with each line having 7 syllables, some people would call it a sonnet, but those people would be wrong. It's just a 14-line piece of syllabic verse. Blizzard. This vast erasure reveals by obscuring. Here is the black spine of the world laid bare in a wash of white in which only the outlines persist of the nearest building, tree, telephone pole, or person, pushing against the soft, slow, implacable tidal wave. all reduced to archetypes. The dim shapes loom and recede as in a dream, leaving no sign that they were ever there. And perhaps they never were. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kurt. Thanks. Our next reader is Simona Carini, and Simona's book Survival Time is one of my most recent releases from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. Thank you for holding it up, because I don't have one right next to me, so that's great. And so we will, somewhere up the road, not too far in the distant future, we will make sure that Simona gets her featured reading for her book as well. So we look forward to that. So just get a little bit of Simona tonight. So welcome, Simona.
Thank you. You could hear me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last time I had a little bit of problems. So thank you. I put the link to the book, and this is the cover, which is actually a picture of mine. I'm very grateful to Hayley for choosing that picture. And so I'm reading two poems, one from the book and one from the recent edition of Sheila-Na-Gig. And this is my first poetry collection, actually. So the poem is called I Ask My Friend How She Feels, Her Response. On chemo, I open my eyes, and it is always infusion day, the weeks in between fused. On chemo, I steep milky tea, keep constant watch as fear stages a coup every hour. I wash lettuce leaf by leaf, and short of breath, I smell cells killed by the drags, metallic. On chemo, I drop a frame, pick up the shards, cannot compose the full picture. On chemo, I look around for my running shoes, the favorite blue shirt I lost, to put them on again. On chemo, I watch a blue jay hop, a squirrel dart, and I want off chemicals, off cancer. I dance a few steps, an oil-slicked bird thrashing its wings around, calling it flying. Thank you. A lot of my poems are about water, and so is actually both of the poems that are in the fall edition of Sheila-Na-Gig. And the first one is titled First Time Rowing on Open Water. I felt the rise and fall as I rowed out of the sheltered marina towards open water. The first strokes tentative and misaligned, while searching for my rhythm on the brilliant blue expanse. Richardson Bay heaved like a giant creature breathing in its sleep. The oars, extensions of my arms, their blades like hands glided through the water, propelled the white sculling boat forward. A wind blew down the hills and buffeted me at its pleasure. The oars caught the waves at wrong angles. My back stiffened. I rowed wielding only arm's strength, not enough to keep the boat on course. Breath ragged, focus frayed, I struggled to find my pace, followed the sequence of strokes' phases. Catch, drive, finish, recovery, repeat. Pushing hard with my legs, stronger than the wind, I inched across to Strawberry Point, turned north, rowed leeward on calmer water, eased into the bliss of long, steady strokes, found again the familiar rhythm of breathing and body motion. Having rowed to the other end of fear, the heaving blue now draws me. I answer its pull when pushing off the dock. Thank you.
Thank you, Simona. Thank you. And just keep an eye on Sheila-Na-Gig online on Facebook, and we'll get Simona's reading set up sometime pretty soon. Our next reader is a frequent contributor. Everyone here tonight is barely frequent contributors to Sheila-Na-Gig online. But our next reader is Betsy Mars.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. I'm still here in Ohio, which makes it appropriate to be here reading with you. And I finally got to meet Hayley the other day. And these readings have just been amazing tonight. I'm very emotional hearing all of you read, and I love everything I've heard. So very glad to be here. The first poem I'm going to read was the one that was in the fall issue of Sheila-Na-Gig. And the lighting's a little bit funny, so bear with me. This is called Petroliana, and it goes like this. The gas station was an island in the after-school stream from Blacktop to Bikini Shop across the boulevard. I took a deep breath, sniffed, a whiff of testosterone in the flow of the carbon monoxide mix. My brother's friend Rick, a gas jockey who later renamed himself Cheshire, became a DJ on some mountain time station. Rock idol thin, he tolerated me. Now there's only an exoskeleton, chittin, what passes for skin. Back then, we went to the filling station to get our fix. We were sold a tiger egg. Hung out on highways and telegraph popped. Sometimes stopped at a mobile station at Pegasus. Sometimes at Sinclair in the Source, which gave way to the Patasaurus, and back again as scientists argue the name, compare spectrum, dig up evidence, divide and conquer better. And I maintained my nostalgia, then for dinosaurs, distinctly distinct, with grins and freedoms, serves the sleight of hand, and the shogun. And then the sound's breaking out. I know the Wi-Fi here is a little bit iffy. I just saw that note. I hope you can you hear me?
Yeah, maybe if you just go a little louder. It's cutting in and out a little bit, but if you go a little louder, it might help.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where my mic is. This one's pretty short, so hopefully it'll work out. This one is called Homeopathy, and it's basically a pandemic poem. Okay. Can you hear me?
It does seem better.
Okay. It's called Homeopathy. I, the other silver-haired women in the wellness aisle, pandemic refugees from the bottle. We nod, recognize each other above the mask. The others once bloodshot eyes. Early on, it took some liquid courage to tell night from day, each day dying, bleeding into another. First, the roots emerged, and I marked time in inches. Dark and light intermingled, distinguished. At last, need from pride. Another trapping we shed like bras. What matters above, within, the head, the heart. The liver's overfed, and we're finally sated, or at least resigned, with eyes that smile, endure. We turn to each other, discover cure. Thank you. I hope you could hear that. Thank you.
The second one was a little better. Thank you, Betsy. Thanks for being here. Our next reader, coming from Athens, Ohio, is Wendy McVicker.
Wow. Thank you so much for organizing this, Hayley. It has been an incredible evening so far, just to hear from those two beautiful books and to have the honor of participating. I'm gobsmacked, but so yes, coming from Athens, Ohio, and I will read two poems. The second one is from this latest issue of Sheila-Na-Gig Editions, and I'm always deeply thrilled when one of my poems finds its way into those pages. And the first one kind of is background to it, I would say. And it's in my chapbook, Zero Adore. I'll put a link in the chat. And this is called, I was always curious about the British expression, safe as houses. I thought, really? Houses? Are they really safe? So this is called Safe as Houses. Where one raises a hand against another, where a jagged voice draws blood, where doors slam, shaking the walls, where ghosts jostle dreamers in their beds, where memory becomes the deep pool I drown in every day, where your stories are the unsafety net that drags me into the scathing air, where the glass, half empty, fills with dust, where calls go unanswered for years as they travel through the galaxy, returning transformed, rippling with ice, where the wind blows in, where hangers rattle and chime in the shadow-filled closet, where these words are born, where silence is no longer enough. So that was one of the rungs on the ladder that got me to the poem that appeared in Sheila-Na-Gig. And curiously enough, it's a mother poem. It's called The Scariest Story. She spun in her sequined satin gown to music we could not hear. We tried to dance to her tune, dizzied as we were by Shalimar and smoke, by her spinning like a record pinned on the spindle. She twirled us round, tiny planets orbiting her sun, craving her light. She spun herself sick, and then she turned on the gas and spun away. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thanks so much. Our next reader tonight is Marjorie Moorhead. Welcome, Marjorie.
Hi, thank you. This is such a lovely evening. I'm really happy to be part of it. I'm not good at writing notes to everybody, but just really great to be with you all and hearing your work. My first one refers to a poem by Ada Limon, and it's from her book, The Hurting Kind. I use a line from Ada Limon to start a poem of my own. She's a funny creature and earnest, and she's doing what she can to survive. In a poem about groundhog and tomatoes, there I am. In the last line, she describes me so well, I use it as a prompt, as first lines, no less, of this poem. Ava's title is Give Me This. She's referring to delight, the having of it, permission in the face of. I contemplate doing what I can to survive and comprise a list. This moment, listening to sounds outside, birds, dogs, children, breeze, seeing the sunlight of July stream through air, spotlight tall orange lilies in our garden and get caught in the green reaching leaves of potted spider plants near the window. Noting with gratitude the fact that we have a garden and a window. Always an earnest creature, I receive the world with gravity. Cautious about danger, I feel its ever-presence. Serene when contemplating beauty, I see it in simple things. Beauty too is ever-present. Saturated in concern for our planet, lamenting our abuse of it, I worry that I'm not doing enough, just wandering, worrying or delighting, but not saving, not rescuing. Do no harm and forefront joy are attempted modus operandi, but enough. And my other poem is one from Sheila-Na-Gig Online, Fall, and I really appreciate having it in there and being with you all. Things we carry get held in skin, melded to bones, loaded in marrow, bodies, they become like baskets, holding the moments we've walked through. A flavor seared on the tongue, stitches to place or person in that moment forever on. Sound that went through chest as song, now lingers always in every vein. Seeing certain light diffused in golden mist, aglow, as J.M. Turner painted, soaks into our hearts like rain. We carry our loads as blessing or burden and become a particular mix, a unique recipe, a precise bouquet, the assortment, shapes, colors, leaves, stems, of which flowers display and describe us. Which flowers display and describe us, stems, leaves, colors, shapes, the assortment, a precise bouquet, a unique recipe, the particular mix we've become. We carry our loads as blessing or burden, soaking into our hearts like rain in golden mist, glowing J.M. Turner-esque. Light diffused, lingering, always now in every vein. Sound that went through chest as song, or a person who in that moment stitches to place, a flavor seared on the tongue. Holding the moments we've walked through, bodies become like baskets, floating in marrow, held in skin, melded to bones, the things we carry. Thanks.
Thanks, Marjorie, for being here. Appreciate it. Our next reader, I have published 2 of his collections so far, and will be publishing a 3rd early next year. And I think you all know who that is. That would be George Franklin.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Wow, there's wonderful poems tonight. Thank you, Hayley. Thank you, Rebecca, everybody. I'm going to read one poem from the latest issue of Sheila, A Dalliance of Crows. I'm not good at introducing poems, so I don't really know whether any of them need introductions. I hope this one doesn't. A Dalliance of Crows. I'd never heard a crow sing before. Cawing, yes, plenty of that. Until you called me over to the big window that looks out on the garbage cans. 2 crows were perched there, large, black, glossy feathers, shadows on the window shade. The sound was embarrassingly pure. No dove or thrush ever did better. I read later, this was their courtship ritual, an intimate moment we probably shouldn't have observed. We didn't mean to be voyeurs, but there we were, listening until they flew away. And the second poem is a new poem. And I've gotten interested lately in poems that argue with themselves a little bit. So there's always this sort of argument buried somewhere in the poem. What gamblers know. Gamblers are more honest than the rest of us. They know we can only take what luck gives. That when it's good, it's not because some virtue rests on our shoulders like a soldier's epaulets. And that when it's not, there's no point to second guess or blame ourselves. Sit morose in cafes or on padded stools in diners, watching in the steam swirling above the cup, the shapes of lives we could have had and didn't. Gamblers know blaming doesn't help. It doesn't make the silver ball fall on red or black when the occasion warrants. It doesn't make the card we need slide obligingly into our hands, or a stack of chips grow like corn stalks out of dry soil. Sometimes bad luck lasts for years. Then one day, there's a perfect stillness. The light reflects from puddles in the street, but it doesn't blind us or make us wince. There's a breeze just strong enough so we notice how it moves over the earth like dice on green felt, like a smile on the face of a player who bet on 0 or 00 and somehow won. How it moves like luck itself, a wave that picks us up and eventually lets us drop. A gambler would know you didn't enter my life because of anything I said or did. A gambler would say it was luck, good luck, a perfect spin of the wheel, the card you would never have thought possible. He'd say, don't ask questions. Don't imagine you did something to deserve this, or worry that you didn't. He'd say it was luck, that's all, and he'd be right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Always great to have you along.
Oh, here's a copy of what the new book is going to look like.
Sort of, kind of. Pretty
Sort of,
close.
kind of.
Where we're at right now, so it won't change much. All right, thanks, George. Our next
Thank you.
reader tonight is Richard Ryal.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here. You can hear me okay? Good. I don't really need an introduction because what I would rather say, other than the fact that I'm coming to you from South Florida, where my students think it's bitterly cold if it gets down to the lower 60s, and they come in their winter coats. But what I want to say is I really, really appreciate those with the dedication to regularly and reliably publish a poetry journal and give a forum for the rest of us. I just think that having done some work on a couple of journals, I know what a thankless job that can be, and I just admire and appreciate anyone who still believes in this in an age where screens get smaller and smaller and are more and more captivating to more and more people. A few months ago, I bought 2 ice cream cones at a Carvel, and the transaction required 3 different devices. And I remember in college working in a Carvel, and if the power had gone out, I still would have been able to complete the transaction. So thank you very, very much, Hayley, and for doing something spectacular. Okay, 2 poems. The first is my poem that was graciously accepted to Sheila-Na-Gig, and it's from a series called Flections, not Reflections, but Flections, because it's about experiencing consciousness and relationship as a physical experience, not just removed from contemplation. This poem is titled How My Body Releases Certainty. Look at the way some berries save themselves from plucking with cutters and snags to ensure they'll have descendants. Berries we teach our children to pick carefully. Nature's urge to create unforeseen results moves enormous interlocking needs and satisfactions through the world. Waiting for you to say something you can't yet, I forage blackberries from the yard. The juice is eccentric and your tongue needs waking. Teeth of knotted twigs betray fat berries, guide my hands, loosely circle my wrist, scrawl an illuminated gospel in blood on my skin. You pull back my sleeve and a berry draws my teeth to your palm. Back of my hand, a luminous stain, a rose window. Only the best feeders in an elixir of appetite, whose teardrop muscles pour their bodies forward, only they get the rest they need. The rest of us grow horns or armor, show thorns, cunning or speed, but you, I love the way you look in my hat. Okay, the second poem, also recently published somewhere, is from a series of poems that are all in form, and they're about a young nun who lives in the Bronx, and her name is Sister Lola, and she journeys into a profound spiritual experience that she knows she's not capable of handling. And she fears that she can't handle the deep spiritual awakening that she wants. So this poem is a villanelle, which helps for this because a villanelle keeps wrapping back to itself, coiling back in as it moves forward. And that's pretty much her situation as she begins this journey. Lola begins. I drift through my dark, a hole without rudder, to follow a bell only I hear. I can't tell you the truth, I can only mutter. I want to pray, but I barely can stutter. Certain I'm guided, still I can't steer, adrift through my dark, a hole without rudder. My heart tests its sails, it races and flutters. My mouth wants to howl, give wind to the sphere, but I can't tell you the truth, I can only mutter. My faith is too weak. Like a new calf at udder, I take it all in, then stumble back, veer and drift through my dark, a hole without rudder. A honey-thick current bears me into utter ruin. In my small mirror, new faces appear. I can't tell you their truth, I can only mutter. Then this terrible grace gives me one last shudder and passes. Familiar pains return with their sear. I drift through the dark, my dark, a hole without rudder. I can't tell you the truth, I can only mutter. Thank you.
I was
I
muted there.
Oh,
There we go. Thank you, Richard. It's fun to hear a good villanelle every once in a while. I tell my students write villanelles, and I have one in Blue Wife, and you know, I think a lot of people have forgotten the poor villanelle, so it's nice to hear one. All righty, thank you. We have two more readers tonight. Our next reader, in my quarterly issues, I always give an editor's prize, and many of the people here tonight have actually received one of those from me. And you're all wonderful, and I love all the poems that I publish. And I always give the editor's prize to the poet who I think like just kicked me to the curb that round. And so I'm very happy to have Ken Meisel with us, who is the winner of my editor's prize in the current issue. So welcome, Ken. And I think it's our first time we've met, and the first time I published you in Sheila-Na-Gig. So welcome to the community. We're happy to have you.
Thanks, Hayley. I'm so thrilled to be here, and was traveling with my wife out west when I got your email that I had won it, which floored me. I have no expectations when I send anything out, and just being accepted was thrilling enough. And then to get the little stipend, the little money. So thank you so much. I'm touched. And like other of you who've said, my God, there are some stunning work here tonight. I know when I'm in a good poetry reading because I'm just energized. The intelligence, the gravitas, it's just gorgeous readings. And so I'm just delighted to be part of this group. I'm only going to read one poem because it's 5 pages long. And that you took it, that it is 5 pages long was itself a thrill. But before I even say anything about this poem, I just want to speak to the 2 women who are doing a book launch. I was taking notes from both your work, Hayley, and yours, Rebecca's, and I had a bunch of notes, but I kind of distilled it down to one thing about why I have to buy your books. And what you do in your poems is you risk. What did I write? You risk deep feeling, but then it gets better. You risk doubt. Then you get deeper and you risk brokenness. And then you bring it home with love. And for me, it's that kind of formula in a poem that makes me want to go back and read it again. So my God, your work is gorgeous, both of you. So I'm thrilled to be part of just that alone. So this is called Contemplation in a Small City Park with Apricot Trees. The only thing I'd say about this poem, it is in a collection called The Light Most Glad of All, which also is coming out in July from Kelsay Books. Oh, joy. And I guess that the thing I'm going to say about it is it's just a kind of playful, discursive poem that appreciates the preciousness of a life experience with another, my wife, with impermanence as a backdrop. Contemplation in a small city park with apricot trees. I've been sitting alone again on this green park bench under the shade trees in that forgettable city park where I used to feed the comatose, easygoing pigeons with my scraps of listless day-old bread. And I've been reflecting on the time that's gone by, especially through my stopwatch. And I've been listening with my whole entire heart to Skeeter Davis's The End of the World, and I can't believe it's over. And maybe it's the season, what with these summer breezes blowing immoral and transgressive through the simple apricot trees, and maybe also the way the pigeons seem to ignore it in their easy, deliberate lassitude. And when I feel them, I can fall asleep again into that remembering that will always ignore the present. And maybe I'll remember all the old rooms and the soft bottles of wine we consumed while listening to Moondance on that old lawless turntable, and how one night I cooked her dinner by candlelight, and we drew ourselves a warm bath and we snuggled into it. And maybe time's contemplation is like a cooing dove, eager for bread. And so we allow it and we follow it, dumbed by its lasting, immutable phonetics. And like two beings sitting still on a bench, one talks and one listens. And I've been in that commandment of love, that contemplation again where the Dharma edicts call up memory and recall. And so time is Dionysian and full of reverie and rapture, and it's also unhinged and seditious and thick with old smells and all those sad morphine fragrances that the self, by its own surrendering into its submissive willingness, can become lost and oddly captive in, like a blindfolded prisoner in a rowboat. And maybe sitting here on this lonesome park bench with my little transistor radio on and dialing down the long band, I hear in the static AM radio fuzz the Glasser Brothers, that country music trio from Spalding, Nebraska, crooning, "Ain't It All Worth Living?" and Through the Eyes of Love. And maybe just because of all this, I'm no longer in control of myself, and I'm just slip sliding like a ready-made drunk, quickly lit on lime juice and gin, and I'm all alone, and I'm readying myself to say my evening prayers under the first carnival stars. And maybe all contemplation arrives through music's deep refractory haze, its soft decalogue of romance and remembering. And maybe I'll hear the multitude of all those finite years just now, as the sumptuous young mother rolls the child by me in a baby stroller, and behind her, the little dog follows after them on a leash, and the father, so young, in his soft red beard, follows still behind, chatting on his cell phone. And maybe all life can be seen through the eyes of love, and that's why it's all so worth living. And once in a room dim with dusk light, I sat so still on a couch I could feel the streams of red blood moving in me, like laudatory commandments through my ears. And I knew I was waiting for something or for someone, but I couldn't see just who. And sometime later, after all the sirens of the evening's torment lessened, I saw in the bathroom mirror someone else's face, someone not me, who had become something in me. And later, relaxed and stretched out and drinking a beer, my legs dangling over the other end of the couch, I turned the transistor radio volume up loud again so I could discover how it was Eartha Kitt could deliver that song under the bridges of Paris, so sublime, where the young lovers turned and they fell into imponderable, immeasurable knots of love with one another. And I saw me under the bridges too, announcing myself to her, my wife, so that we could live in that excited, animated firing that the brain, deep in love, can accomplish when it hurls itself against all the loneliness, inside the insanity of deep-hearted wishes. And out here today, just sitting alone on this bench, every hour of that night, long ago, blinks and flutters here before me like a calendar of tiny, lost, tormented, softcover memories. And maybe all human contemplation collects what's been held autogenic in the thickness of the body. And upon this recall, all the old memories collapse into a blue feathered pile, blue feathers dropping on lace. I can't begin to describe it to you beyond this set of colors. It just seems like blue feathers falling one at a time into a creamy euphoria of lace. And maybe that's all memory is or becomes, except that maybe it's a cream going into indigo, or a blueness of string gradually tugged through a soft hole in the roof and then into nothingness, like a feverish string of insomniac stars strung down through eternity, so that when you try to locate it later, all that's left of it is a distaste, something avowed and admitted, and yet somehow echoic, and yet not at all forgettable, and even then, inspective and heedful, attentive, like dust, or a glimpse of a pre-dawn dream, floating random and imponderable. And maybe this is what memory sounds like a fanning of bird wings with bullets shooting through them, so that in their echo, one just hears a repetitive whacking and flapping of wings, followed by an emptiness. An empty illiteracy that mimics the silence of blue feathers dropping on cream lace. I can't describe it any other way. It's just this. And once I sat straight up in the front seat of my car and I bellowed out with Gladys Knight and the Pips to Midnight Train to Georgia, just to feel it, that galvanic, inflammatory willingness to ride something far out of comfort range and to fail at it anyway and completely. But that was a long time ago, before I was here in this luminous park. And it was before I heard the whack-whack of bullets through feathers and the sudden fog cloud of nothingness where everything fails, and even the almond blossoms we waded through like a twilight path vanished, and the blue feathers fell like illiterate memories onto lace. But it's okay. It's all right. I'm just sitting here on this little bench, sipping my whiskey while the kids across from me discover the adventures inside Twilight monkey bars, all the worlds they can climb into, while their mothers chitter-chatter on cell phones and sip tea. And on the sonic transistor radio, I discover just now Mr. Al Jolson blurting out me and my shadow. And I'm in another hotel room again. And this time so sanctified, I can't remember how it is I've even arrived here. And I'm struggling just to stretch the bow tie around my collar so as to tie it for the wedding I am in. And my legs shake a bit They tremble under me, and my leather shoes, supposedly steady, just a groom's pair waiting to walk up to meet his bride, slide left and right as I try to stand, watching myself in a small oval mirror, just trying to find what it is I'm so afraid of, so galvanized in. And time is anomalous. It's a nomology of scriptures and edicts we remember of ourselves, all the good and bad memories, mind you, and all the memories that torment us or uplift us again. And on this park bench today, as the simple white clouds pass me by, I forgive every moment I was mutinous and against myself because I couldn't hear or didn't even try to see the concluding bagpiper there, standing listless and readied by the park gate, piping out that final song we'll all hear. And to tell you the truth, he was always playing it, just for her and me. And if I stop now and I wait, trying to end this poem, all I can hear as she and I dance under the apricot trees in this ephemeral park while trying to recall the fragrant nowhere smells of that day is Peggy Lee singing that song, Mr. Wonderful. And by God, she's humming it, and she's humming it right on time for me.
Thank you so much, Ken. It's really a great treat to hear you read that poem. And I don't take too many long poems for Sheila because I have the attention span of a gnat. So, that one kept me going, for 5 pages. And Barbara Staples here too. And I wouldn't be able to find any of the gems that you're sharing tonight without Barbara's help as first reader. And I remember Barbara saying about in our little comments on Submittable about that piece, how she was struck by your how this journey of this poem is so big, but it always comes back to that park bench. You keep bringing us back to that park bench, and just hanging on all the images and everything. So thank you for reading, and thank you for your comments earlier. Appreciate it. So,
Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure.
hope you'll send more our way. All right, thank you, everybody. We have one more reader for tonight, and very happy to have with us Columbus, Ohio poet Jennifer Hambrick. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thank you, Hayley. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And Hayley and Rebecca, congratulations to both of you on the publication of your books. That's exciting. I'm just putting in the chat information about my most 2 recent collections, which both came out in 2021. So the first poem I will read is in the current issue of Sheila-Na-Gig Online, and this poem is called Refashioned. The epigraph, it reads, sort of describes a little bit of the inspiration for the poem. It's after a dress by an unknown maker and remade circa 1840 by Mary Slade Stevenson. So I saw this historic dress actually in an exhibition at the Decorative Arts Center of Ohio, and it sort of inspired this poem. Refashioned. When she's 15, she walks down the aisle, floorboards creaking as her Oxford bow pumps carry her past pews packed with townsfolk sizing up her propriety. The air hangs heavy with truth. She is laced and cottoned. Wild flowers flocked into the muslin that cinches her waist to a prim vanishing point. The dress is heaven-hued before it fades nearly white from wear to church and cotillions, where whispers of dowry slip around the sidelines. A few pennies each month, saved for 2 years, buys its fabric. It's been a while since she's grown, so her mother takes out the scissors and thread, pumps the treadle, and sews her daughter's future on the bias. An oblong box sits today on a cabinet full of folders stuffed with yellowed tax returns. My grandmother makes the box from the cardboard of a bolt of fabric, covers it with scraps of white polyester with a window pane pattern woven into its warp. Pearl-tipped pins secure a corsage of red satin roses and green velveteen leaves to the top. And when it opens, I am 15 and wearing the dress my mother made from that cloth, and my date pins the corsage over my left collarbone, and his brown wool jacket prickles strong against my fingertips in the cool of autumn and the scent of aftershave that end a few weeks later, after the homecoming dance leaves in a swirl of its own stardust. My teenaged hands fumbled with the loose threads of that frayed love, its thin scraps now shaped by years and my much wiser foremothers who seemed into their own lives, saw my future open as a lid. Excuse me. By way of introducing my second poem, I'll just say that I had the and I'm having the tremendous honor to be appointed Poet Laureate of the 75th anniversary season of the Chamber Music Columbus concert series here in Columbus. It's a concert series that invites world-class classical music chamber ensembles to Columbus for performances in Columbus's historic Southern Theater. And a big part of each concert is hearing the music in that particular theater, which is a beautiful gilded theater, more than 125 years old, and has absolutely miraculously perfect acoustics for classical chamber music. And I say miraculously because the theater was designed as sort of a silent film house and a theater where like musicals could be performed. It was not designed for classical chamber music, but in fact, all of the artists who perform on the Chamber Music Columbus series all tell us, you know, can we come back and make our next recordings here? And these are artists from New York City and Berlin and London and Paris and all of that. So it's an absolute gem, this theater. And so my laureateship comes with a commission to write a poem for each concert of the current season and to perform each of those poems at the beginnings of each of the concerts in that theater. So here I am kind of giving a little bit of a preview of one of those poems, which I'll read later in the season. This poem is called The Score Unfolding, and score as in musical score. The score unfurling. Sorry, the score unfurling. Friends, this place of gilded wonderment draws us all together. Each of us a cobweb's thread stretching its own angle, wefting on a lonely axis toward the warp of our own silk. You have one strand to weave, one melody of light pulsing to its own beat, spreading out before you in a hue of its own rhythm. And this music of yours, this piece you have been willed into existence to compose, you have the chance to play just once before some other hand comes in and drops a coda, a swift send-off into the breath that is not breath, into the buzz beyond the dome that ties us to the grit and soil we sleep and step on. No one knows how many grooves your masterpiece may claim before the needle scrapes the label in the center of your vinyl disc one final time. None of us can say how many beats you may squeeze into each bar, or at what tempo you may play the chords from a recurring dream that haunts you like the second hand haunts a clock. At what speed your maddened cross rhythms may punch through day that seals up at night, peck through dark that disappears at day. At what pace your trills may shiver in the face of some unknown place beyond the keys and strings your hands can grasp. Friends, I am trembling with you from not knowing of that land beyond air and water, beyond soil and sun, beyond city steam and rusted girder, beyond broken glass and sagging telephone wire, beyond shadows on the sidewalk and city buses in the slow lane, beyond the dripping heat of last month's paycheck and the rain sweating through the hole in your shoe. But here under this dome, a scroll unfurls itself for each of us inch by inch each time we lift our pens. That parchment takes our ink drops the way an innkeeper welcomes guests, holding the syncopations pounding out between us, the tunes we make up on the spot, and the lyrics we breathe with them. Our score drinks in our breaking backbeats and our songs of glory until our ink fades to a scratch. Before our score's edge decals into dust, let our chords spell warm earth, nursing radish and cauliflower, sun running down garlic green, protruding into bulb. Let our tunes ease like vapor trails in graceful blur and briny misted swoop and caw of seagulls. And while we are up here, consider the miles lengthening beyond our soft ceiling, more miles than our bounded scrolls will ever reach. As galaxies pulse in fleeting years and fling their stars into the darkness of each burning day, may our music fall soft with the fire of our finest song, weaving our stanzas with harmonies of light and shadow, our brief rhythms blazing fearless and setting our short melodies aglow. Thank you.
Ooh, wow, Jennifer, thank you so much for sharing those powerful poems. Jennifer's poem Refashioned also appears in Women Speak. This is an anthology here. This is edited by Carrie Gunter Seymour as part of her Women of Appalachia project. So I've been honored to be the publisher of this for the last 3 issues. And this one, I'm hitting the order button tomorrow. So these will be coming hot off the press very soon. And Wendy McVicker has a piece in here as well. So hope you'll check out this wonderful book. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here and sharing your work and helping me and Rebecca celebrate the release of our new titles, but also just being part of this Sheila-Na-Gig community means so much to me. Every time I put an issue out, we have these readings. It's just wonderful that y'all just keep coming back, and it's just so much fun. So thank you again for being here, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.